Hi guys, Tressa Shepherd. What are the most common reasons for a board to discipline a counselor, and what is your personal reaction as you read through the list? Well, Texas does not have a clearly published list, but I chose to go ahead and stick with Texas instead of going into like Virginia or Louisiana that have a very detailed list of counselors and violations, etc. Because I live here and I plan on staying here, and oh, my battery's dying. Anyway, so I really dug in and tried to figure out how Texas handles this. And what I found out is that BHEC, which is who manages our board of examiners, BHEC stands for Behavioral Health Executive Council. It was not even established until September of 2019. And from what I can tell, a state organization, they called it the Sunset Advisory Board, was who managed it prior to that. And I found a report from 2017 that breaks down 309 complaints brought against counselors in Texas. And not general counselors or not mental health professionals, but specifically licensed professional counselors. 130, so of the 309, 135 were for unprofessional conduct. That was the largest grouping. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell me what unprofessional conduct is, and that could have been much more helpful. But other areas are 68 for standard of care, 27 for practicing without a license, 14 for fraud, deceit, or bribery, so wrong, and 13 for sexual misconduct. Of those, only 104 were brought forward and investigated further. And then of those, only 12 counselors were punished. That is a lot of wasted time and energy and effort and money. Let's see. My thoughts. Well, that is my thought, that I think that it's a waste of time, energy, and money, but also I worry about those 309 people that didn't get the empathy that they needed, that they didn't get what they needed from their counselor. And I worry for them, and that weighs on my heart. Finally, while I was researching all of this, I came across, it's Aya and Bacones, and it's not dated, but it's an article that mentions the Texas Board of Directors decisions. And that's how I found it. And what I found was interesting, but only slightly off topic, is that the difficulty that I had researching Texas board decisions is also an issue that ethical researchers come across, because the states don't report their information the same way. So it doesn't mesh. It's not apples to apples. They use the example of Idaho and Texas. In Idaho, they'll go into extreme detail, but in Texas, it'll just say dual relationship. And that makes it really difficult for counseling research to be effective. And let's see, the ACA code. My case. The case that I chose was Riley versus Texas State Board of Examiners of Professional Counselors. And Riley let her license expire longer than a year. Leading up to that, Texas has things that you can do to make sure that your certification is fine or your licensure is fine. But after this long time, she had her license revoked because she did not renew it. And she came back and sued the Board of Examiners for the state of Texas for licensed professionals. And so let's see. She lost. She lost because it turns out that she has an ethical and professional obligation, regardless of the fact that, wait a minute, I'm not telling this well. Okay, Riley lost her license because she didn't renew in time. She turned around and sued the Board of Examiners here in Texas for licensed counselors. And the judge ruled that she has a professional and ethical obligation to maintain her licensure. And even though the Board of Examiners did not send her a reminder, again, she has a professional and ethical obligation to maintain her licensure. it's a big deal and it needs to be treated accordingly. And that's what the judge found, and she lost the case. So in Texas, well, here, let's do ACA first. ACA says that knowledge counselors know and understand the ACA Code of Ethics and other applicable ethics codes from professional organizations or certifications and licensure bodies of which they are members. The lack of knowledge or misunderstanding of an ethical responsibility is not a defense against the charge of unethical conduct. And that's straight from ACA Code of Ethics. Again, it's section I.1.A. And then in Texas, the Texas Occupational Code, Chapter 503 of Licensed Professional Counselors, it says that basically anybody that represents themselves as a counselor or provides counseling services is a counselor. And what I read into that is the requirement that you must, to be licensed, or to be a counselor, you must be licensed. And if you're not licensed, then you can't do your job. Let's see, so what does the Code of Ethics say? About counselor impairment. Rule 681.41 of the Texas Administrative Code very blatantly says a licensee must not provide services while impaired by a physical, mental, or medical condition, or by medicine, drugs, or alcohol. Nobody take NyQuil and then try to perform your counseling. That's not okay. Let's see. And then in the ACA, in section C2G, it says that we have to monitor ourselves and make sure that we are not impaired by stress, by physical, mental, or emotional problems. And that if we are, that we can't offer our services as counselors. That we have to seek assistance, and that could be reaching out to a peer, it could be reaching out to a supervisor, it could be getting counseling of our own, it could be taking a vacation or taking a leave of absence until you kind of get it together and are able to help people again. It's like in the airplane, they tell you to put your mask on first before you care for the other person in the event of a crash. You've got to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. And that's a big deal because you might harm your client otherwise. Also we have an obligation to report our supervisors, supervisees, research assistants, peers, anybody that's a counselor or working towards the goal of being a counselor that is impaired and is performing counseling. Let's see, what is the question that this brings to mind for me? Well, it's not exactly a question, but don't forget to renew your license. And then the ethical responsibilities are not just from within the profession, but they can also be, used as legal precedents, which is kind of interesting. But my question is, how do we as counselors remember every ethical stipulation all the time? And so if I go back to the Bible, I think it's Jeremiah 28:11. It talks about, for I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future, declares the Lord to the nation of Israel. That helps me. Anyway, good night, guys.